Imagine hiring the smartest employee you ever met, but every time they need to use Gmail, Slack, your CRM, or even your database, you have to hand them a completely different instruction manual. Not only that, but every time you add a new tool, you have to teach them all over again. It can get really freaking frustrating. So that might sound ridiculous, but that's essentially how we've been building AI applications. And it's exactly why everyone's suddenly talking about something called Model Context Protocol, or MCP. Some people are even calling it the biggest breakthrough in AI integration since APIs. But is that actually true? And if you're building AI tools, or even thinking about starting an AI business, understanding the shift could give you a massive advantage because it's making powerful AI integrations more accessible than it has ever been. So to answer the question about whether MCPs are the biggest breakthrough, you first have to understand why APIs, one of the most important technologies in modern software, were never really designed for AI in the first place. Because once you see the problem, MCP suddenly makes perfect sense. By the way, if we haven't met, I'm Dr. Erin Jacques. I'm a professor and AI strategist. And on this channel, I help entrepreneurs build AI-powered applications that solve real problems and generate recurring revenue. So let's dive in. To understand why MCPs exist, we first need to understand APIs. For decades, APIs have been the backbone of modern software. Every time you check the weather, book a flight, send a payment, or log into a website with your Google account, there's a good chance an API was working behind the scenes. So most APIs communicate over HTTP or HTTPS, the same protocol your web browser uses every time you visit a website. You don't need to know the technical details, just know it's the standard way software communicates over the internet. An API is simply a way for one piece of software to ask another piece of software to do something. That's it. One application sends a request, another application processes that request, then sends back an answer. It's fast, predictable, and it is incredibly reliable. But for that exchange to work, the first application has to know three things: where to send the request, what information to include, and what kind of answer it's expecting back. So in technical terms, those are called the endpoint, the parameters, and the response. Now, we're going to dig a little deeper and understand what those actually mean. So I want you to imagine you're building a weather app. The weather company might have an API that looks something like this: api.weathercompany.com/current. And I want you to think of the /current as a department inside the weather company. And different departments would have different / and whatever it's called, right? So that's the endpoint. It tells the server, I want the current weather. But that's not enough. The weather service still needs to know more information, like which city. So your request might look something like this: api.weathercompany.com/current !city equals Miami. Now the city equals Miami is a parameter. It's simply extra information that helps the server answer your request. The server then sends something back like this: Miami, 86 degrees, sunny. So that's the response, though in practice it usually arrives as JSON, which is simply a structured way of organizing data so the software can easily read it. And that's how APIs work. The software already knows where to go and what to ask for, and what kind of answer it's going to get back. That's what makes APIs so fast, reliable, and predictable. But there is one big assumption built into that system, and it's that the software already knows all the rules before it ever sends the request. And that's exactly where AI makes things different. And so you might be wondering, if APIs work so well, why isn't that enough for AI? And the answer comes down to one important difference. Traditional software follows instructions. AI reasons. Now, remember our weather app. The app already knows which endpoint to call, which parameters to send, what kind of response to expect, because a developer programmed all of that information ahead of time. An AI model doesn't have that advantage. So if you ask it, what's the weather in Miami today, it understands your question. Obviously, that's what's so amazing about AI. But it doesn't automatically know which endpoint has today's weather. It doesn't know which parameters that endpoint expects, and it doesn't know what the response will look like. All it starts with is your intent. And that is a completely different way of interacting with software. Traditional applications are given the exact steps to follow. AI starts with a goal and has to figure out which tool it needs and then how to use them. That's exactly why the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, was created. An MCP server acts as a middleman between an AI model and an application or service. So its job is literally to advertise what the application is capable of doing, and it does that in a standardized format that the AI can understand. And I want you to think of it like a table of contents for the application. So instead of forcing the AI to guess what's available, the MC server tells it. It's like, here are the capabilities I offer, here's what each capability does, here's the information I need from you, and here's what I will then return. In other words, instead of a developer manually teaching the AI how to use every endpoint and every parameter, the application does the job of describing itself. It does that using structured descriptions called JSON schemas, which simply tell the AI what each capability does, what information it needs, and what it will return. So the AI can then discover those capabilities, choose the right one for the task, and then to use it correctly. So when you ask a large language model like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini to perform a task, the AI first reads those capabilities. It decides which one best matches your request. The MCP server then uses the application's existing APIs to perform the task and to return the result back to the AI. The AI then turns that result into a natural language response for you. And that's the real innovation behind MCP. The APIs haven't changed. The application hasn't changed. What's changed is that AI no longer has to be manually taught how to use every single tool. The application literally advertises and tells the AI what it can do. So at this point, you might be wondering, does this mean APIs are going away? And I'm going to tell you, absolutely not at all. In fact, MCP usually sits on top of the APIs you already have. Most of the time, those APIs are still doing the actual work behind the scenes. They're still retrieving data, updating databases, sending emails, creating support tickets. What's changed is who knows how to use them. Before MCP, developers had to manually teach AI how to interact with every API. With MCP, the application advertises its own capabilities, allowing the AI then to discover and use them on its own, which is super freaking cool. So it's not really MCP versus APIs, it's MCP working with APIs. APIs still remain the foundation. MCP simply makes those APIs much easier for AI to understand and to use. So why does any of this matter? Because every major shift in technology has one thing in common. It lowers the barrier to building. Years ago, creating a website meant writing HTML by hand. Then the website builders made it accessible to millions of more people. The same thing happened with no-code tools. And now it's happening with AI. MCP doesn't eliminate developers, but it dramatically reduces the amount of custom work needed to connect AI with the tools and the applications that you use every single day. That means building powerful AI workflows becomes much more accessible, not just for large companies with engineering teams, but for solopreneurs, creators, small businesses, anyone with an idea. So we're moving toward a world where the question is no longer, can I build this? It's becoming, what do I want to build? And I think that's the real story behind MCP. It's not just another technical standard. It's another step toward making incredibly powerful technology accessible to everyone. And I think that is the biggest opportunity. The gap between having an idea and actually building it is getting smaller and smaller every year. Understanding technologies like MCP isn't just about keeping up with AI. It's about understanding the technologies that make modern AI-powered web apps possible. And that's exactly what we build inside the Leveraging AI community. My goal isn't to teach you one AI tool after another. It's to help you build an AI-powered web app people actually use and subscribe to. Along the way, you'll naturally learn the technologies that make it possible, whether that's Claude Code, MCPs, database, authentication, payments, or whatever comes next. The tools will obviously continue to evolve. The destination won't. So if you're ready to stop wondering how all these AI technologies fit together and start building your own AI-powered web app, I'd love to have you join us.